Hello class. Today we're going to talk about the answers to the test review. Okay, so I want to go over them to show you exactly what you need to be able to do to be able to be successful tomorrow on the test. So here are the first 4 questions, so let's go through these. On each of these we need to remember that our object, our goal, is to get the letter by itself. And we've got 3 main steps that we follow. Get the letters on one side, get the numbers on the other. To do that you add the opposite, and then you solve. Well, question number 1, one of those is already done for you. You'll notice the letters are already together because we only have one letter. So that means I just need to get the 5 over to be with the 35. And to do that, we add its opposite. So I should see a line that looks like this. 10x plus 5 plus the opposite of 5, which is negative 5, equals 35. And if I add something to one side, I must add the same exact thing to the other. And that's the line that I expect to see on your test tomorrow. Okay, so now the 5's go away. We're left with 10x equals, and on the right-hand side we do the math and we get 30. Now how do I get rid of a multiply by 10? I do a divide by 10. We end up with x is equal to 3. Now number 2, we do the same exact thing, but I do see something I need to take care of first. One of the things that I do, okay, is I change my subtraction to addition, next number to its opposite, just to prevent careless mistakes. Now that is just a suggestion. It's not something that's mandatory, but it does prevent a lot of careless mistakes. Now we need to do the same thing that we did on the first problem. I need to get the negative 9 over to be with the 15. And we do that by adding its opposite. So 6a plus negative 9 plus positive 9 equals 15 plus positive 9. So then that gives us 6a is equal to 24. So now we divide both sides by 6, and you end up with a is equal to 4. Now number 3 and number 4, we both bring some division or fractions into the problem. The process is still the same. Okay, so number 3, we change subtraction to addition next to its opposite. Now I need to still get rid of that negative 13. So I've got d over 5 plus negative 13 plus positive 13 equals 3 plus the positive 13 I added on the other side. So now I end up with d divided by 5 is equal to 16. Now, in the previous problems, we had to multiply. Like in this number 1, I had to multiply by 10, I did a divide by 10. In number 2, I had to multiply by 6, so I did a divide by 6. Well, this one I have a divide by 5, so how do I get rid of it? Well, I do a multiply by 5. You do the opposite. Okay, so if I multiply one side by 5, I have to multiply the other side by 5. These 5's divide out. I'm left with d equals, and 16 times 5 gives me 80. Now number 4, we actually have a fraction. So when we get to this multiply by 1/4, we'll see how we get rid of that in just a moment. So first I have to get rid of the 7. So 1/4 w plus 7 plus negative 7 equals negative 4 plus the negative 7 I added on the other side. So we're left with 1/4 w is equal to, and then negative 7 and negative 4 make negative 11. Now to get rid of a multiply by 1/4 or any fraction, we just divide by the fraction. Well, if you remember in our fraction rules, it says to divide fractions, don't ask why, just flip the second and multiply. So to divide by a fraction, we actually multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 4 over 1. So when I multiply, 4 times 1 is 4, 1 times 4 is 4. You get 4 over 4, which is equivalent to 1. So if I multiply one side by 4 over 1, I got to multiply the other side by 4 over 1, which in essence is just 4. So w is equal to negative 44. And that's how we do the first 4 questions. Okay, all of those are 2-step equations. That was the 7th grade standard. Now let's move to the 8th grade standard. The 8th grade standard is solving equations with variables on both sides of the equal sign. So in this one, we still do the same thing. It's just we now have to actually work with our letters as well, not just the numbers. So in number 5, I'm going to change the subtraction to addition, the 18 to a negative. Now I need to get this 4b over on the other side to be with the 8b. So I start working at the equal sign. And I write 4b plus negative 18 plus, and now what do I use in order to move the 4b? Its opposite, negative 4b. So now I need to add that same exact thing to the other side. So 8b plus 2 plus the negative 4b. Now we combine like terms, combine things that are alike. So the 8b and the 4b, the negative 4b can go together to make just a 4b plus 2 equals. And over here, my 4b's are eliminated. They go away, and I'm left with negative 18. Now, this problem looks just like the ones that we had on the first part of the test review. So now I need to get rid of this 2. So I do that by adding the opposite. So 4b plus 2 plus negative 2 equals negative 18 plus negative 2. So 4b is equal to negative 20. So now we divide both sides by 4, and we get b is equal to negative 5. Right? And number 6, this one we actually have some things that we need to do before we actually move letters and move numbers. You'll notice on the right-hand side I have a 2w and a 5w. Well, those w's could go together. So I end up with 7w plus 6 equals, well, 2w and 5w make 7w plus 7. So at this point in time, we should be having bells and whistles going off in our head, because on the right-hand side I have a 7w, and on the left-hand side I have a 7w. So that tells us automatically that our variables are going to be eliminated, and there's only 2 answer choices. Let's see which one this one is. So we do need to actually prove that the letters will disappear. So I'm going to move this 7w over to be with that one. So 7w plus negative 7w plus 7, and then 7w plus 6 plus the negative 7w that I added on the other side. So you'll notice that the 7w's on both sides go away. They're eliminated. And I'm left with 6 is equal to 7. Well, we ask ourselves, is that a true statement? Well, if it's not a true statement, then we put a slash to the equal sign, which says that they are not equal, and we write the phrase no solution. And that is our answer. So now to number 7. Well, number 7, I see that I've got a minus there I need to fix. But I'm also beginning to see some things. Okay, one, I've got 2 numbers I can put together, but I also have an 8h on one side and 8h on the other. So that should tell me that it's either going to be a no solution or the other type of answer that we can get. Okay, so let's first put the negative 8 and the 4 together. So we end up with 8h plus negative 4 equals negative 4 plus 8h. And we'll notice that that's the same on both sides. So we take care of our 8h, so I'm going to move this one over here. So negative 4 plus 8h plus negative 8h is equal to 8h plus negative 4 plus negative 8h. So again, my 8h's go away, and I'm left with negative 4 is equal to negative 4. Well, that is a true statement. So if what we get, the resulting line, is true, we write all real numbers, because every number I plug into the h will work. Now, number 8 is the last type of question that we have to really focus on in the 8th grade, and that is problems with the distributive property. So I'm going to change this minus to a plus and the 5 to a negative, and then I'm going to distribute this 8 to everything inside the parentheses. So this 8 really means I need 8 3x's, and what that would give us is 24x plus, and I also need 8 negative 5's, which would give me negative 40. So I just pass the 8 out with multiplication to each member of the parentheses. And I do the same thing to the other side. 6 to 2x, or 6 2x's, gives me 12x plus, and 6 3's give me 18. And now you'll notice this problem looks just like all the others. So now we move the letters to one side, numbers to the other, and solve. So I move the 12 over to be with the 24. So I start here on this side. So 12x plus 18 plus the 12x. On the other side, I end up with 24x plus negative 40 plus negative 12x. So the 24 and the 12 will make a 12x plus negative 40 equals, and on this side, the right-hand side, my 12x's go away, and I'm left with 18. Now I need to move the negative 40 over to be with the 18. So 12x plus negative 40 plus 40 equals 18 plus 40. So now I simplify, and I end up with 12x equals 58. Now I divide both sides by 12, and I end up with x equaling, now 58 over 12, when you actually type that in on the calculator, you end up with 4.83333, and And that just keeps going. Okay? Well, when you end up with an answer like that, you're not allowed to give me a repeating decimal as an answer. So if you see this kind of an answer, that means we go back and look at the 58 over 12 and we just simplify it. Okay, we don't treat it as a division problem, we just simplify. So if we take the 58 and the 12, we find out what do they have in common. They have a 2 in common, so I could divide. I get 29 over 6 for my answer. That is an okay answer. Now you could also write that as 4 and 5/6 as your answer, but you're not allowed to give me this repeating decimal. And that's all there is to equations. Now the rest of the test review is reviewing some old stuff. Okay, so let's see if we can do that. Number 9 says, which list shows the numbers in descending order? Well, descending, what does that mean? Well, descending order means greatest to least. Okay, big to little. So we look at our answer choices. We automatically look at A here, and we see that we start with negatives and we go to positives. Well, that's not going from greatest to least, that's going from least to greatest, so A is out. Okay, for B, we've got to change some things. So we've got an 18, but then we've got to take this square root of 21 and type that into the calculator. And if you do, you end up with 4.58, and then a bunch of other decimals. Okay, then 1/2, we would put that in, and we would get a 0.5, and then I got negative 4.82. So I go from 18 to 4 to 0.5 to 4.8. So that is a good answer. If you do the rest of them, you end up with, on C, the square root of 9 is 3. 17 over 2 turns out to be 8 over 5, so that automatically throws that one out, because that's not going to be greatest to least. And then if you do D here, you end up with 8.75. Okay, and then you end up with square root of 50 is 7.07, and it just keeps going. 33 1/3 is really just 0.3 with a bar. It's 1/3. But then I have this 40. Now, if this 40 were actually in the front, then it would be okay, but it's not, so that one is out. Correct answer on number 9 is B. Number 10, Fred orders a set of numbers on his homework. In ascending order, the first number is 5 1/3, the last number is 5 1/2. Which of the following numbers is not in Fred's list? So ascending, okay, is the opposite of descending. Ascending means that we're going to go from little to big. Okay, or least to greatest. So we need to figure out 5 1/3. What is 5 1/3 so I can kind of understand that? Well, 5 1/3 is 5.3 with a bar, or 5.33, and it just keeps going. Okay, and then we've got 5 1/2, which is the same thing as 5.5. So I'm looking for numbers that are between 5.333333 and 5.5. But I want to know which one is not part of that. Well, 5.34, well, that's just barely inside there, but it is. Okay, 5.45, it is definitely, because it's in between the 3 and the 5. So when we look at C right here, we've got 5 and 5/12. Well, that gives us 5.416 with a bar. Oh. Okay, so because that 4 there is in between the 3 and the 5, then it works just fine. The square root of 25 is equal to 5. Well, 5 is not in between 0.3 or 0.5. Okay, it's actually below that, so D is the correct answer. Okay, number 11 says the surface area of Earth is 5.101 times 10 to the 8th square kilometers. What is that number in standard form? Well, we know that this times 10 to the 8 means I'm going to move that decimal 8 places to the right. Because it's a positive exponent, it's going to be a big number. So that means I'm going to take the 5.101 and move the decimal 8 places to the right. So there's 1, 2, 3, and now I need 5 more places. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So for the empties, we add zeros. For our official number then, it's 5101, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and then we throw in the commas for good measure. And we tack on the label. Since it's a word problem, it's kilometers. Number 12. The set of irrational numbers includes all of the following except, well, we know pi is our most famous irrational number. Okay, then B here, we've got 0.45, 455, 45555. It looks like there's a pattern of repetition, but it's not a consistent pattern. So this number is an irrational number. Now, if you type in square root of 169 into the calculator, you find out that the answer is just plain old 13. Well, we know a plain old 13 number is not irrational. It is actually a rational number. So since we're looking for the set of irrational numbers includes all of the following except, here is our exception, C. And then for D, the square root of 124, you get something like 11.135, and it just keeps going. All right? So there's our test review. So if you can answer all of these questions, especially the ones involving solving for an unknown, you will do absolutely perfect on the test tomorrow. So good luck. Study hard.